Today we'll be talking about stress and obesity, a look beyond energy balance. In our Nutrition 101 book, we talk a lot about energy balance and that when we consume more food and expend less energy, we gain weight. And when we expend more energy and consume less food, then we lose weight. However, I think we all have the experience that it's a little bit more complicated than that. So let's first take a look at obesity here and talk a little bit about why we care about excess body fat. When we think about obesity, a lot of things come up for people. People might think of personal things such as laziness or inability to be motivated or lack of self-control. We put all these prejudices on obesity, and really it's not about what somebody is doing or what somebody's looking like. What we really care about is the consequences of excess fat on the body. So, because of a lot of those prejudices, we see a lot of psychiatric and psychological problems such as depression and low self-esteem. But we also see a host of physical problems. So we have cancer, cardiovascular disease, infertility, diabetes, gallbladder disease, asthma, and sleep apnea, which all can, lead to consequences that ultimately can lead to mortality. So where we store fat is going to either put us at greater or less risk of obesity-related diseases. Those people who store more visceral fat, which is the fat below the abdominal muscle layer in the stomach area, that is the type of fat that puts us at highest risk of disease. And you can see that that fat is located nearer to the organs, whereas the subcutaneous fat, it's external on the outside layer above the muscular layer, and it's usually stored a little bit more greatly in the butt, thigh area, so that results in a pear-shaped person. So the apple-shaped person is at much higher risk of obesity-related diseases than the pear-shaped person. When we look at energy expenditure equals our energy needs if we're trying to maintain our body weight, and this is the theory of energy balance. Energy expenditure is involved in three different components. First is the thermic effect of food. That's how much energy it takes for us to digest and absorb and metabolize. Then we have our basal metabolism. That's how much energy it just takes to be alive, to move blood around our body, and to breathe. And then we have our activity, and you can see the activity is really what differentiates the different amount of energy that we expend in a day. So to go a little further on this theory of energy balance, we can see that when we consume more energy than we need to store that energy somewhere. That's the law of thermodynamics. We have to put that energy somewhere in order to stay in equilibrium. So a way we can do that is any calories that we consume. Carbs have 4 calories per gram, fat has 9 calories per gram, and protein has 4 calories per gram. Any of those can be stored in the body as adipose tissue or fat. We can also store about 2,000 calories of carbohydrate as glycogen, which is our immediate energy storage that we'll call upon, say if we're taking a really long run or bike ride or something like that, we dig into our glycogen stores to maintain equilibrium there. Then, as we expend energy, we start to mobilize some of those things such as glycogen, body proteins, and adipose tissue, all of which we can use as fuel to create energy, or ATP. There are a number of factors that affect our basal metabolism. So we have this physical activity that we can kind of control. Basal metabolism, we can't really control, but there are certain things that we might do or certain genetic traits we might have that will either increase or decrease our basal metabolism. So if we have more muscle, we have a higher basal metabolism. Muscle is more metabolically active than fat. If we're a greater height, we have greater surface area, and that increases our basal metabolism. greater weight causes us to take more energy to move, and also it takes more energy to transport nutrients around the body. In pregnancy and lactation, we're in a period of growth or feeding another person, so that's going to increase basal metabolism. Periods of growth will increase as well, as will fever or stimulant drugs or exercise. On the other hand, if we're chronically eating less than we need to maintain our body weight, our body goes into what a lot of people in the media refer to as starvation mode. So if we're on a chronic low-calorie diet, that's actually going to cause our basal metabolism to decrease. Starvation will cause our basal metabolism to decrease as a mechanism to keep us alive. And then our low thyroid hormone levels will also cause basal metabolism to decrease. And low thyroid hormone levels can be just a hormonal imbalance, or it could be due to low iodine levels in the diet. The theory of energy balance states that there's 3,500 calories in a pound. If you exceed your EER, or estimated energy requirement, which remember is based on the dietary reference intake's estimate of your height, weight, physical activity level, gender, and age, looks at, exactly how many calories you might need a day, given all of those factors. So if you exceed your EER by 500 calories a day, 500 times 7 equals 3,500 calories, so that would be a gain of 1 pound in a week. So a lot of things in our environment make it really easy for us to exceed our EER. First off, we live in a toxic food environment. So there is food available everywhere, and a lot of signals externally from marketing and media, and just even availability and the way that food is presented in the media as sort of a calmer of stress, and the way that sugar and fat are metabolized in our body to make us feel less stressed. All of these factors are going to lead to us wanting to consume more and more. So we can see this toxic food environment has resulted in about a third of our population being considered obese. We also have a toxic work culture. So our work culture does not do a very good job of allowing us to take breaks that are needed for meals that are enjoyable and that we can digest and absorb properly. So we are often eating on the go or not having time to prep food because our culture is so focused on work that we might get breakfast in the car, we might have lunch at our desk, and by the time we go home for dinner, we might just want to, get a pizza because we don't have the energy to prep something. And this results in a highly processed food environment in the home as well. So this is an example of America's version of this sociologic study called What I Eat Around the World in 80 Diets. So other countries and other cultures had diets that looked much more like food, and although you can see a couple tomatoes and grapes in there, most of our fruits and vegetables are in the form of processed spaghetti sauce, French fries, and pizza sauce. And most of our fruits are in the form of highly processed fruit drinks. Now, when we look at this food culture, you can see that typical American diet is, a result of this toxic food culture and the toxic work environment. And on the other side of the coin, we have a toxic diet culture. So we have this culture of diets that promotes an unrealistic figure. All the magazines have covers of people who have been manipulated with their diets prior to the shoot, so most of them are dehydrated so veins can show and abs and musculature can show a little bit better. And then above and beyond that, a lot of times the people who produce these magazines will then retouch the photos. So thighs look thinner, biceps look larger, breasts look larger. All these different things are done and then put right in front of us at the grocery store checkout line to make us feel as if, maybe that's something that is desirable, but we can't possibly live up to, which further decreases self-esteem and further decreases the confidence to maybe make some changes in the diet, because what's portrayed in the media is just totally unattainable. Each of us has a specific body type, and there's another theory that says each of us has a specific set point, which is a range of weights that our body is most happy in. There's three basic body types: the ectomorph, which is the type that has a really hard time keeping on muscle or keeping on weight. This is typically the female body type that's portrayed in the media. The endomorphic body type that tends to store a lot of extra subcutaneous fat. So it's really hard, even if that person's at a healthy body weight, to see muscle tone or abs or things like that. And then there's the mesomorphic body type that gains muscle quite easily, and this is typically the male body type that's portrayed in the media. So we have these genetic issues that we're all born into, right? So we have these genes. We might be an endomorph or a mesomorph or an ectomorph. We might genetically be predisposed to certain diseases. But when certain people are exposed to certain environments, that can change some people's gene expression. So over 100 genes have been associated with body weight management, and an example of this is the Pima Native Americans. When they are exposed to a highly processed American diet, you can see that the BMI goes up to about 30. So the average Arizona Pima who eats a typical American diet is considered to be obese. However, right across the border of Mexico, the same tribe lives. However, that tribe has not been exposed to farm subsidies and the highly processed American diet. Most of them still farm, live off their own land. And as you can see, the Mexican Pimas have an average BMI of around 23, which is considered normal or healthy. We do need to take into account that BMI doesn't tell the whole story about obesity, as it's just a measure of your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared, so it doesn't take into account things like muscle mass. But when you're looking at two populations, it's a really good comparison here, looking at the Mexican Pima and the Arizona Pima, pretty similar genetics. The only difference here is what food environment they've been exposed to. So we see this BMI has gone up, and as a result, in Arizona Pimas, the rate of type 2 diabetes is higher among this population than anyone else in the country. So you can see that gene expression that puts the Arizona Pimas at risk for type 2 diabetes might be slightly different when they're exposed to the American diet environment versus, say, a Caucasian person or a Latino or an African American. In our next segment, we'll continue on talking a little bit about genes and the environment, as well as talking about stress and stressors and how that might affect obesity.